Welcome. Tell me if I'm too loud or not loud enough. I'm Ellen Smith. I know most of you. Paulette Adams knows most of you. And if I don't know you, introduce yourself to me later, please. We'd love to meet you. Tonight, we're presenting a history of North Brookfield High School. It's a long history, 155 years, so it's going to skip a lot of things probably. We have questionnaires that we use to gather information, and we'd certainly like to look at this program as an ongoing program. If anyone is interested in responding to the questionnaire, I'd be happy to give you one. We can certainly add to this program going forward, so talk to me later if you'd like. North Brookfield High School. NBHS, A History of North Brookfield High School, produced by Paulette Adams and Ellen Smith, and presented by the North Brookfield Historical Society. From the beginning. From the beginning, Massachusetts, first as colony and later as Commonwealth, played a major role in the history of public education in the United States, as schools transitioned from a largely religious to a largely secular focus. Born in Franklin, Massachusetts in 1796, Horace Mann became the most prominent of the early 19th century reformers of public education. He championed the concept of the common school, available to all children, regardless of social class or other differences. In Brookfield's 2nd District, which became the incorporated town of North Brookfield in 1812, schools were built in various parts of town, with the largest of the schools in the town center. Students attended these schools from about ages 6 to 14. In 1827, Massachusetts passed a new education law which required towns of 500 or more families to establish a tax-supported high school open to all students. Before North Brookfield reached that benchmark, those who wished to continue formal education beyond the common school could enroll in private academies, though these schools charged tuition which put them beyond the means of many families. Academies helped broaden secondary education, stressing practical skills that students could use regardless of their career choices. Benjamin Franklin promoted teaching all classes in English, with an emphasis on math and science. By the mid-1850s, North Brookfield reached the 500 family threshold specified by the law of 1827. This was a time of great change in the United States and throughout the world. The Industrial Revolution was well underway in New England by this time, with factories turning out a variety of practical items such as shoes and textiles. The temperance movement was firmly established, with temperance groups active throughout the New England states. Abolitionists decried the continued existence of slavery in this decade prior to the beginning of the Civil War. The women's rights movement was in full swing, with the first ever national convention having been held at Brinley Hall on Main Street in Worcester in 1850. And some women pushed the boundaries of what was considered acceptable attire by adopting the bloomer look, named after the feminist Amelia Bloomer. Photography was in its infancy in the 1850s when these men and boys posed for a portrait. In November 1856, Democrat James Buchanan of Pennsylvania was elected president. And in March of 1857, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in the famous Dred Scott case that slavery could not be banned by the federal government in any federal territory. Abolitionists were outraged. In the fall of 1857, the first international financial crisis struck in what is referred to as the Panic of 1857. And the Second Opium War continued in China. Sports history notes that in 1857, the game of baseball adopted 9 innings as an official game. And here in North Brookfield, Amasa Walker served on the school committee as the town planned for construction of its first high school. Land at the corner of Grove and South Common Streets was purchased from Tyler Batchelor. A frame building was designed and constructed at a total cost of $9,225. This was the only photo we'd found of the school, which opened with 45 students, or scholars as they were called, under the direction of Principal O.W. Whitaker, a graduate of Middlebury College. But then Paulette noticed that this early photo of the Batchelor Company showed the roof of the first high school at the far left of the frame. The photo appears to date from before 1875, since there is no evidence of railroad tracks in front of the factory. This enlargement, though grainy, suggests the rounded top of the cupola, which isn't visible in our first photo. The steeple at the right is that of the Grove Street Methodist Church. In the early 1860s, the fire department moved its equipment from the Congregational Church to the walkout basement at the rear of the new high school, thus saving approximately $70 per year in rent. Among the department's equipment was a hand pump engine similar to this one. The school committee expressed concerns about the inconsistent instruction in the town's district elementary schools, which left some students struggling to pass the high school entrance exam, which was required by state law until at least the first decade of the 20th century. But of more concern was competition from the workplace. The North Brookfield School Committee pointed out that high school-age boys often chose factory work over continued schooling, noting that, quote, young lads could earn from $3 to $5 a week. The report went on to characterize education as fixed capital to be used to advantage in later life. Despite such promotion, many young men continued to choose a factory job rather than a course of study at the high school. 10 years later, the school committee report reiterated this concern. Your factories are filled with youth, and your schools are, to too great a degree, empty. This was the high school's general course of study as outlined in the 1865 school committee report. Those taking the classical course would take other subjects, including Greek, which would prepare them for admission to college. 1872 to 73 appears to have been a contentious year. The school committee report noted complaints regarding high school principal Albert Jewell. He smokes. He does not attend church. He is not generally known in town. Mr. Jewell's contract was not renewed. The following year, the committee report decried what it saw as children growing up undisciplined at home and, quote, let loose to prey upon the schools, unquote. There was little accentuation of the positive in this report. By 1878, the high school offered 2 courses of study, classical and English. While there were only 11 students in the senior class, the junior class was almost twice as large. Unfortunately, a month before the school year was to end, disaster struck. Shortly after 8 a.m. on Tuesday, May 14th, a fire broke out in the high school basement, probably caused by a faulty furnace. The town's fire equipment was caught up in the blaze, and the small fire brigade at the Batchelor Shoe Company tried but was unable to save the building. By the time the West Brookfield Fire Company arrived, in just 30 minutes, it was too late. The school and most of the town's fire equipment were destroyed. The town acted immediately. A town meeting was held, and voters approved construction of a new high school, this time to be built of brick. Voters also approved a separate fire station to be built on School Street, and a new reservoir on Central Street to enhance fire protection in these days before the construction of the town's waterworks. Reverend J.M. Avon, a member of the school committee, went to Boston to purchase replacement textbooks directly from the publishers. Students' families bore much of the expense, with the town funding the remainder. The new school was built in the same location at the corner of Grove and South Common Streets and opened in early 1879. The senior class of 21 students would be the first to graduate from the new school. This is an 1885 view of the Bachelor Factory with the new high school visible at the extreme left of the frame. Interesting detail work appeared on the front facade, and a cupola capped the slate roof. The town report for 1878 detailed the expenditures for constructing and furnishing the new school. The total came to $13,253.39. Parochial schools became common in Massachusetts in the 19th century, partly as a reaction against the anti-immigrant sentiment of the time. In 1888, North Brookfield's St. Joseph's Parish established an elementary school located on Mount Pleasant Street. From then until the early 1970s, incoming freshmen at North Brookfield High School not only became familiar with the new school, but with students they may previously not have known very well, if at all. Over the years, North Brookfield High School also educated students from Oakham, New Braintree, East Brookfield, and West Brookfield in the days before regionalization and school choice. This is the 1888-89 senior year report card of Amasa Walker's grandson, Amasa Walker II. This photograph from the family archives of Edie Webb Ramaska shows the porch of the high school as it appeared in the 1890s. Edie's grandmother, Edith Adams, was a member of the class of 1895 and is pictured here wearing the elaborate style of dress with mutton chop sleeves that was in fashion at the time. This well-worn view includes younger children. These are the only photos we've seen that show students and teachers in front of the original facade of the 1878 building. As the student population grew in the 1890s, the school committee recommended an expansion of the high school. Voters at a June 1897 town meeting approved an addition, which was designed by the Worcester architects Fuller and Delano and built by William Fulham of North Brookfield at a cost of $9,325. With the expansion complete, this was the new view of the high school, as the addition, built onto the front of the building, brought the new entrance much closer to Grove Street. The class that entered the high school in 1895 saw their building double in size, but by the time this freshman class of 19 students entered their senior year, their number had been reduced to just 9, Alice Ashby and her 8 male classmates. North Brookfield was not as isolated in the 1890s as one might think, partly due to the railroad line that joined North Brookfield to the Boston and Albany main line at East Brookfield. This school magazine article describes how on May 6, 1899, a group of 13 North Brookfield High School students left the School Street station by train for Boston with a change of trains in East Brookfield. The group and their chaperones visited sites along what we call today the Freedom Trail. they arrived back in North Brookfield on the 7 p.m. train. This is a view of one of the classrooms, known then as excuse me, recitation rooms at North Brookfield High School in 1899. With the arrival of the 20th century came a dramatic upsurge in the number of students attending high school across the United States. High schools expanded their curricula to serve the needs of both college-bound students and those seeking business and vocational courses. Albert Prouty's class of 1910 not only had more gender balance than their counterparts a decade earlier, but they appear to have had a mascot as well. Not even Fridays were casual in those days. This class of 1910 photo is the earliest photo we've found that shows a North Brookfield High School class trip. Kate Middleton would surely find kindred spirits among the young women of the class, whose flair for hats is very much on display in this picture taken in Washington, D.C. In the early 20th century, there were 9 elementary grades. These 9th graders would begin their high school years in the fall of 1908, and those who continued on would graduate as the North Brookfield class of 1912. In 1912, as North Brookfield observed the centennial of its incorporation, Clarence Burley's mother, Helen Moody, completed her senior year at North Brookfield High. Helen served as class secretary. Her records of class meetings are part of the Historical Society's collection. Helen is pictured here in the middle row at the extreme right with some of her classmates. Evelyn Clapp's 1912 report card notes that from 1.5 to 2.5 hours daily of home study is necessary for good work. In the spring of 1912, Japan presented a gift of cherry tree saplings to First Lady Nellie Taft. The Nabisco Company introduced the Oreo cookie, and Fenway Park opened in Boston. The class of 1912 traveled to Washington in April and was photographed there on the very day the mighty Titanic sank, April 15th, 1912. Helen Moody is seated in the 3rd row, next to last at the right. This photo of the class of 1913 points out Ernest Flanders in the back row. This class of 14-year-olds was photographed in 1916. World War I had begun 2 years earlier. The United States would enter the war in 1917. Here are Con Sheehan, Charles Buckmaster, Winona Woodis, and Johnny Crooks with the class of 1921. This photo shows the North Brookfield High School student body in 1922. One of the seniors pictured was Helen Parkman. Her family lived at Lakeview Farm on the Oakham Road. Weather permitting, Helen traveled to school on horseback and stabled her horse in a barn on School Street while she attended classes. Posing for a photo meant wearing your Sunday best. Bow ties appear here and there on the boys. And the midi look was popular with many of the girls. A rather dramatic change in fashion is apparent in this photo of the class of 1928. Short hair and shorter skirts have been adopted by these young women. The fellow wearing glasses is George Banks, who cut a dashing figure with his bow tie and center-parted hair. Before moving on to some of the recollections North Brookfield alums have shared, we'll describe the 2 other building projects that have transformed North Brookfield High School into today's North Brookfield Junior Senior High School. In 1954, planning began for a new junior-senior high school that would be built on farmland on the Oakham Road. The total cost would be $600,000, with state aid covering 39% of the cost and the remainder paid for over 20 years. Voters approved the project, and architect Julian Goodrich designed the new building. The school opened in the fall of 1956, and a formal dedication was held in October. The building was expected to serve the town for at least 50 years, and it almost did. In the year 2000, voters approved construction of a new junior-senior high school just east of the existing building. This photo shows demolition of the 1956 building. Here are the remains of the old building on the right and the new building designed by architects Dorr and Whittier of Burlington, Vermont, on the left. The new school opened in the fall of 2004. Junior high classes are housed in the north wing, and high school classes and office space in the south wing. Now that we've come to the era of what we can call living memory, we'll look at some of the recollections that North Brookfield High School graduates have shared with us of their alma mater. What makes a good teacher or a memorable class, we asked. You may detect a theme or two in the answers that follow. Edith Doan graduated from North Brookfield High School 83 years ago, in 1929. In answer to our questionnaire, she wrote of Principal Raymond Burns, who maintained a high standard of conduct by students and faculty, and Miss Mary B. Conroy, who taught English and Latin. Edith also enjoyed history and science classes that helped prepare her for nursing school. Barbara Thompson Ryback graduated in 1935. She credits her English teacher, Catherine Quine, for thoroughly preparing her for college at Boston University. Clarence Burley, class of 1944, learned to love poetry in William T. White's English class. Mr. White taught Shakespeare by means of the Orson Welles production of Julius Caesar, portrayed as a modern fascist dictator. Clarence was 16 in the fall of 1943 when Catherine Kelly began her teaching career. Clarence described her as smashing. Regina Turtelot-Lahair remembers Anne Murphy's English class in the mid-50s, and Mrs. Murphy's tremendous enthusiasm for all things Shakespeare. Mrs. Murphy loved teaching. Regina also credits business teacher Muriel Coughlin with preparing students for the workplace, including how to disassemble and reassemble a typewriter. Like Barbara, Clarence, and Regina, Mary Ellen Brown Kosmeski recalls her English teacher, Anne McAvoy, and her enthusiasm for her subject. Mary Ellen's class wrote an essay inspired by Simon and Garfunkel's song, Sounds of Silence, and Mary Ellen remembers Miss McAvoy whenever she hears that song. Mary Ellen also wonders if Mr. Kai still has his Civil War uniform. Bob Potvin remembers Tom Severance teaching math, all sorts of math, as well as driver's ed, and Mr. Leach, who was principal when Bob graduated in 1960. Beginning early in its history, North Brookfield High School offered students extracurricular activities focusing on shared interests. Opportunities for writing, drawing, and photography were available through school newspapers, magazines, and yearbooks. One of the items in the museum's collection is this 1887 North Brookfield High School newspaper. It appears to be modeled after the North Brookfield Journal of the time. the editors encouraged students to submit carefully written material to the paper. The paper included mention of the Piano Fund, a reference to a senior boy's interest in a freshman damsel, and advice to younger students to keep their slingshots out of sight. Local businesses supported the paper through ads like these for Sumner Homes Clothing Store, Alfred Burles Furniture, Buffington Brothers Provisions, and anthracite and bituminous coal from A.H. Foster. The class of 1899 published this impressive magazine at the end of the school year. Ads helped defray the cost of printing this substantial magazine. Among the articles was this page one imagination of life in North Brookfield in 1950, complete with mention of the great city hall that had taken the place of the old townhouse, and a granite cathedral on the site of the old cemetery at the corner of Maple and North Main Streets. In the spring of 1929, the Purple Announcer debuted under the direction of editor-in-chief Edith Doan. Charles Varney contributed a column on the subject of radio. Faculty advisor was Roe Grace. North Brookfield's first formal yearbook, The Commentarian, was produced in 1936. This photo shows the state-of-the-art equipment on which the Commentarian was composed in 1938. Yes, state-of-the-art technology. The school newspaper of the 1940s was known as The Comet. This issue dates from Christmas 1946. Gert Neeler Kennan and Sybil Vorse Sandman were among the staff members of The Comet that year. The girls' and boys' basketball seasons were about to begin, and the sophomore class reported that John Crucell was the high salesman for their class in the annual magazine drive. Over the years, a number of clubs were organized around shared interests. Edith Doan enjoyed participating with the debating team during her high school years in the late 1920s. Prouty High School in Spencer had a strong debate team at that time, and the two schools may have met in competition. Here are the Future Farmers of America in 1964, and 1964's Future Homemakers of America. The Ski Club in 1970, and the Motorcycle Club in 1972. The 1977 Math Club. Sports have been important extracurricular activities since the late 19th century. We may not associate North Brookfield High School with football, but the sport was contested back in the day. In its September 25, 1896 issue, the North Brookfield Journal reported on an upcoming game between the North Brookfield and Warren high school teams. We haven't been able to unearth any photos of North Brookfield football teams, but this 1898 picture shows the Spencer team. North Brookfield was likely included on the list as one of Spencer's opponents. An October 23, 1896 article in the North Brookfield Journal protested Spencer's use of three players, quote, none of whom were legitimate competitors in a high school contest, unquote. Play was apparently not limited to high school students at that time. This is the 1901 Prouty team during another winning season, and I only put that in because I love the uniforms. Jim Buzzell's grandfather, Joe Tucker, class of 1915, was a member of the North Brookfield High School baseball team. North Brookfield's 1921 baseball team posed for this photo on the front steps of the high school. Connie Sheehan and Johnny Crooks are in the first row at the extreme right. The 1937-38 basketball season was an exciting one, as Coach McCarthy's team met arch-rival Spencer for the first time that season in a game played at the town hall. According to the article, the girls' team would play the preliminary game. Bud Lane was a member of the 1947-48 boys basketball team. This is the girls' team from the same year. These are not high school players, but the photo shows the town hall decked out with the protective netting used during the frequent basketball games played there in the days before there was a high school gym. The annual David Prouty cheerleading tournament began in the late 1940s as an effort to put more emphasis on girls' athletics. North Brookfield's squad proudly took the second-place trophy in Prouty's 1950 tournament, thanks in part to little Ellen Ledoux's presence on the team. This is the 1951 cheerleader corps with sisters Mary Ledoux Doros and Pam Ledoux Leach. The track team, 1969. Golf, 1970. Boys soccer, 1972. Tennis, 1977. Boys basketball, 1981. Field hockey, 1984. Girls basketball, 1995. And girls soccer, 2002. I have to say that some of my favorite yearbook photos are these from gym shows in 1962 and 63. 50 years ago this year. Remember when schools had trampolines? Students looked forward eagerly to the annual senior class trip, a tradition that endured, not without challenges, until the 1990s. This photo is worth seeing again, if only for those fabulous hats. It must have been a bit chilly in Washington in April of 1913. In the 1940s, the destination was either Washington or New York City. Seniors, chaperones, and of course the bus driver gathered for this photo in 1951. Classes raised money during their 4 years of high school to cover the costs of their senior trip. Cookbooks were popular fundraising tools over the years. The 1947 senior class cookbook included a recipe for pigeons submitted by Ruth Kordick. Not to worry, the ingredients listed included beef and pork, not pigeons. Sylvia Varney's simple, delicious pound cake appeared in the cookbook compiled by the class of 1958. In 1938, a carnival show was held to raise money and showcase North Brookfield High School's singing and dancing talent. Other fundraisers included fudge sales, which were discontinued during World War II. Classes in the 1950s raised money through paper drives. Bob Potvin's class of 1960 sponsored a card party, a talent show, and a book sale as fundraisers for their Washington trip. Music, plays, and dances have been staples of high school life since the 19th century. High school students in 1884 expressed the hope that a good piano could be purchased to add interest and value to the general exercises of the school. The 1888 town report noted that the high school students had purchased a piano, which they were willing to donate to the town if it would be kept for high school use and if the town would deal with repairs. Barbara Thompson Ryback wrote the lyrics to the class song of 1935 and later enjoyed a career in music education in Brookfield and North Brookfield. The class of 1936 chose the comedy drama Goblin Gold as their class play. It was performed on April 24, 1936 at the Town Hall. The Philip Barry comedy Spring Dance was presented by the class of 1944, again at the Town Hall. Among the cast members were Jean Buckmaster as Sally Prescott and Margaret Booth as Kate McKim. The 1965 senior class play was Home Sweet Homicide. As sophomores in 1938, John Irish, Arthur Sandman, Donald Granger, Homer Forbush, and Wayne Sheldon played in a group called the Northerners. While in high school in the early 1940s, Lou Grace continued his violin lessons and performed as a soloist. Here is the North Brookfield High School Chorus in 1969. The North Brookfield concert and marching bands have a proud tradition. This photo is of the Winter Carnival performance of 2000. And here the band marches in the 2010 Memorial Day Parade. And of course, there's the tradition of the junior prom, this one in 1963. Mary Ellen Brown remembers the many hours spent decorating the gym for her junior prom in 1968. Here's the junior prom of 1970 and 1978. And finally, on the topic of music, how many high schools anywhere in the world can say that the Rolling Stones played tennis on their courts? But that's just what Mick Jagger and company did in the summer of 1981 during their stay at Longview Farm Recording Studio. A lot has changed since North Brookfield High School was founded in 1857, and high school students are often among the biggest fans of technological advances. Technology in the 19th century meant gas lamps or electric lights, and concerns over noxious fumes in chemical labs at the high school on Grove Street. For high school students of the early 20th century, technology brought major changes in transportation and communications with the advent of the automobile and the telephone. Clarence Burley recalls that by the 1940s, dial phones were being introduced. North Brookfield phone numbers had just 3 digits, since there were fewer than 1,000 phones in town. Clarence and his friends listened to the radio during its golden age of Jack Benny, Fred Allen, and Orson Welles' Mercury Theater. By the time Regina Turtelot and her classmates graduated in 1957, TV sets, the black and white variety, had become common household devices, and the top 3 shows were I Love Lucy, The Ed Sullivan Show, and General Electric Theater. As graduation approached, Regina's dad urged her to study key punch, one of the leading edges of the computer revolution. When Mary Ellen Brown Kosmeski thinks of the latest in 1969 technology, she recalls those 8-tracks in the car. And not just any car. Mary Ellen loved the Mustangs of the 1960s. Not to stray from our topic, but did anyone really have one of these? Many memories of high school are local, but sometimes the wider world makes its presence felt in the lives of high school students. Students in the early 1940s were very aware of international events. Clarence Burley was an 8th grader in 1939 when Russia invaded Finland. Music teacher Ted Hopkins had North Brookfield students singing Finlandia by John Sibelius over and over. The 1942 yearbook is dedicated to servicemen. The senior class advisor, Mr. Carlson, left his teaching position to join the Navy, and the class fudge sales were discontinued. Clarence recalls that the opening of school was delayed in the fall of 1942 and 1943 so that students and teachers could work at Brookfield orchards picking, grading, and shipping apples and putting them in cold storage since there was no one else available to do the work. On a lighter note, in February of 1951, North Brookfield, and especially North Brookfield High School, became a test market for a Brazilian soft drink, Guaraná, that became known as Rio Rico. The Bieber Polar Soda Company and the Worcester Chamber of Commerce hoped to establish a trading relationship with Brazil. But they needed to know if the popular Brazilian soda would appeal to American taste buds. North Brookfield School Superintendent John Glenn saw this as an educational opportunity, so he and high school principal Dean Hoyt assisted with the marketing study. Shirley Willard Cummings was a North Brookfield High School freshman that year, and she recalls many hours spent researching Brazil's geography, culture, and economy under the direction of social studies teacher Steve Cronin. During the week of January 29th to February 3rd, each North Brookfield household received a 6-pack of Rio Rico. The soda was distributed in the workplace at the Quabog rubber and asbestos textile factories. But the main target audience was the younger residents, especially North Brookfield's high school students. It's hard to imagine today's school administrators offering its students as test subjects for a sugary soft drink. But in 1951, each student received a bottle of Rio Rico at school each day for that 1 week. The study was upbeat in its assessment of the popularity of the drink. The culminating event was the so-called Teenage Canteen Dance on Saturday, February 3rd. Do you suppose that any of these teenagers or their families saved one of those soda bottles? Museum piece. Rio Rico was judged either good or fair by more than 80% of the residents who responded to the survey. It appears that Rio Rico was never added to the Bieber Polar Company's product line, though Guaraná remains the second most popular soft drink in Brazil, just behind Coca-Cola. Controversy visited North Brookfield in 1963 when the U.S. Supreme Court declared mandated Bible readings in public schools to be unconstitutional. Massachusetts Attorney General Edward Brooke issued a formal opinion calling on all cities and towns to abide by the court's ruling. The tradition of Bible reading in Massachusetts public schools had a long history. In 1847, Horace Mann wrote in support of daily Bible reading. But shortly after Attorney General Brooke's advisory was distributed, 350 of Massachusetts cities and towns complied with the Supreme Court's decision. Just one did not. That one was North Brookfield. The November 8, 1963 issue of Life magazine chronicled the town's stand and the divisions that it caused among townspeople, including the students at North Brookfield High School. The school committee had voted 5-2 to continue the Bible readings. In his autobiography, Bridging the Divide, Edward Brooke wrote of requesting an open meeting with the citizens of North Brookfield to be hosted by the school committee. The meeting was arranged, and Attorney General Brooke faced a determined audience. In his memoir, Brooke wrote, "As I walked down the center aisle that night, I could feel the anger and hostility. The audience listened politely, and I listened to them with equal care." Brooke continued, "In a nation of laws, most individuals and groups will accept the law of the land if they feel they have had their say. This proved to be true in the case of North Brookfield." In December, the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court ordered that the North Brookfield School Committee end Bible readings, and the school committee complied with the court's ruling. Apparently, this sort of controversy is not a thing of the past. In February 2012, a federal judge ordered this prayer banner removed from Cranston High School West in Rhode Island, ending a year-long legal battle. North Brookfield High School has a long tradition, and we'll end this presentation with a story of a tradition and connection that binds North Brookfield's 19th century students to those of the 21st century. Theodore Bates was among the first students to gain admission to North Brookfield High School when it opened in 1857. He graduated first in his class in 1859. 50 years later, Bates made a gift of $50 in gold to the valedictorian of the class of 1909, Raymond Dunphy. In his letter to Dunphy, Bates asked that Dunphy make a gift to the valedictorian of the class 50 years later, in 1959. This photo of the class of 1909 appeared in the July 2nd issue of the North Brookfield Journal. Dunphy is the young man at the extreme right. Dunphy was just 16 when he graduated, and he would go on to graduate from Clark University in 1913. Raymond Dunphy carried on the tradition. In June 1959, Dunphy recognized Harvey Reed, valedictorian of the class of '59, with a gift of $100. 49 years later, Harvey had a serious heart attack, but he recovered in time to attend North Brookfield's graduation in 2009. Harvey presented a $500 gift to valedictorian Madison Hicks and expressed the hope that she will continue the tradition that began with Theodore Bates in 1859. Madison has just completed her junior year at Drew University. The North Brookfield Junior-Senior High School class of 2012 will graduate on Sunday and take their place among the school's alumni. We hope they take happy memories with them, such as the adventure of the great Halloween snowstorm of their senior year, with the field hockey team practicing for districts in the snow-rimmed parking lot. We'll conclude by extending our congratulations and best wishes for the future to the class of 2012, and our thanks to all those who helped us with our look back over North Brookfield High School's 155-year history. Thank you. Here we are. And rumor has it that there will be an alumni booth at Old Home Day on August 18th. We'll perhaps see some of you there at that time. And if anyone does have anything to share with us of your high school recollections, you can contact us through the Historical Society, drop a note in the mail, probably send that to the library, North Brookfield Historical Society, care of the Haston Library. Thank you all for coming.